that I feel like AI gives everyone superpowers. I think that it democratizes development. OpenAI is hiring a bunch of software developers. And if really AI were going to replace developers, OpenAI would be the first company, probably, or Anthropic to do that. So I think that we're a far way away from it taking developers' jobs. Because you told me not to fangirl about AI the entire podcast, that I had to bring in some of the pitfalls. Hi, everyone. I'm Jasmine Robinson. I'm a senior technical program manager at Netflix. I work in infrastructure and platforms, specifically on generative AI. So, for those of you who are familiar with infrastructure and platforms and have companies in which you have an infrastructure team, we build and support the tools and services that our Netflix engineers use daily. We have something called the paved road, which I'm sure some of you have heard of, especially if you've seen some of Jim's previous podcasts. Some teams refer to the paved road as the golden path. For Netflix, this is about 130 internal tools and services that we use to provide a smooth developer experience. Basically, we want to make our developers' lives easy, we want to reduce developer toil, and ensure that our tools play nicely together. I got into generative AI in about 2023 when I started playing with ChatGPT. Of course, I think that's when everyone got familiar with GenAI, and also GitHub Copilot. So I was like, you know what? We need these tools for our developers. We need them yesterday. So I was the person that helped originally roll out our GitHub Copilot Enterprise license for all of our developers, as well as our OpenAI Enterprise engagement.
Awesome. That's really cool stuff. Because for folks who are listening, if you didn't catch my previous episode with Shunday, well worth checking that out. And just learning more about the paved path and Shunday's hierarchy of needs, which is something we covered, her version of Maslow's hierarchy of needs for developers. Jasmine, you are very, very bullish on AI. You are. I notice for those who are listening, Jasmine's background is Netflix GenAI developer enablement across the back, looking very, very cool. And if anyone follows you on LinkedIn, which I highly recommend you do, there's a lot of very, very bullish content on AI. It's like, yeah, this is the cool stuff we're doing. So obviously you mentioned that you were dabbling with GitHub Copilot and this kind of ChatGPT. This kind of excited you. But why are you so bullish on AI? What is it that you think AI is going to solve for the world as a whole? What gets you excited about it?
What gets me excited about it? I would say that I feel like AI gives everyone superpowers. I think that it democratizes development. I think that it increases creativity by reducing the amount of time that we have to spend on tech debt or documentation or things that are mundane and repetitive that we can offload to an AI so that we can focus on the things that are more creative and that we enjoy doing. So I'm very much the sort of person who believes that you need to keep a human in the loop. I know some people are like, AI is going to replace us all. I know a lot of developers are concerned about that, but OpenAI is hiring a bunch of software developers. And if really AI were going to replace developers, OpenAI would be the first company, probably, or Anthropic to do that. So I think that we're a far way away from it taking developers' jobs.
Okay, that's an interesting point, actually. Yeah, because as you say, if the AI companies still have to hire developers, then there's no way the AI is going to be good enough to replace us. And I know that's kind of the doom and gloom scenario. There's like this Devin or whatever it was, this AI software engineer that's came and went. Doesn't seem to be that spoken about anymore. But yeah, this idea that, if anyone was going to do it, it would be the AI companies, especially you think OpenAI have just landed, was it $40 billion in funding over the next few years? Why would they spend that on engineers if we could be replaced?
Exactly. So when you see that Anthropic and OpenAI have stopped hiring software engineers, that's your signal that maybe you need to pivot to something else.
I guess just look across all the companies. If OpenAI stops hiring, that's not necessarily a signal. It's just maybe they've spent a lot of money and that's it. But if across the board everyone stops hiring, then that's when we get worried. Because you actually did mention in one of your LinkedIn posts, you mentioned a Jazzbot. So I'm curious. Jazzbot obviously implies to me that this is an AI agent that's going to replace parts of you. Now, you mentioned AI is great for doing the drudge work, the stuff that you don't want to do, or the stuff that's boring, repetitive, easy. There's the old quote that AI does the work it can do, so I can do the work that I can do. So what would Jazzbot do for you? What would you replace with an AI agent?
So, my New Year's resolution for 2025 was to figure out all the ways that I can automate my work and then share it on my website. So, I have a hobby project, which is my GenAIsecretsauce.com site. And I realized that working at Netflix, I'm surrounded by genius. I'm surrounded by some of the best minds in the world, and we speak at a level that doesn't really propagate down well to typical like citizen developers or someone that doesn't know how they can apply AI to their everyday lives. So as I'm doing my own automations, I'm then trying to translate exactly what I did into simple words that other people can understand and apply to their jobs. So we talked earlier about something that I created recently was I have a Gen AI Builders Knowledge series. We meet monthly and I record the 1 hour session. And I wanted a way for someone to capture that knowledge as quickly as possible just in time as they needed it. And the video wasn't the best format for that. So I created an application that will transcribe the entire video. It will detect when there's scene changes, and then it will take screenshots, and then it will summarize and chunk the entire summary, embed the screenshots, add a glossary, add frequently asked questions. It's now in a text format which can be indexed by I just triggered my Alexa. That can be, I'm like, why is she talking?
This is the downside to AI. Sometimes it just does things completely unexpected.
Exactly. Sometimes it just jumps in and thinks I'm talking to it.
And do you realize just by saying that the A word, you've just triggered the same device of everyone who's listening?
I probably just triggered it again. Well, the thing is, like, I didn't know if it was Siri or Alexa or Hello Google. Like, I have so many devices in my house right now. They should just like have conversations when I'm trying to do a podcast. Anyway, what I was saying is that now it's in this format that is easily embedded into a vector store, which can then drive a chatbot or enterprise search. So anytime someone wants the context from those sessions and they happen to be engaging in a chat session with any sort of copilot that we have launched internally, that context is available to them. This is why I'm so excited. Like these sort of things are just so fun.
Okay, so you've basically identified a problem, and that problem is there's all these sessions that happen, and there's people who need information from those sessions where they don't necessarily have to watch or don't necessarily have time or want to watch an entire, say, 1 hour session. And especially if you've got, we talked about this on one of our sessions, and here's a library of 100 of them. I can't remember which one. You suddenly need this ability to mine the information from these videos. Now, you could obviously just do a basic, here's some keywords against each video, do a search, but that doesn't necessarily match the things people are finding. Instead, what you're saying is we're going to create transcriptions, we're going to augment those transcriptions, we're going to provide additional information, make it searchable, and give me a natural language interface to it. So I can say, hey, someone was talking about something like this, can you find me the thing? And then the LLM is able to go, okay, based off the semantics of what you're asking here, that aligns with these terms here, or this part of the transcription, or this augmentation for this section. Go to this video, and the section is between minutes 21 and 24 with this person talking. Bang. So what you're doing there is you're literally just taking that drudge work of, oh great, I've now got to search for the bit in the video, and then replacing that with a kind of a more automated system that makes people's lives much easier. It's not just a fancy search, it's kind of a much more natural language, much more easy to use because you explain what you want and that can then tie to the right terms. It's not just a simple word type search. That's what you've built.
Right. And then if you can access it as you need it, if you can access it from a copilot that is trained on our context, or not trained, but is pulling in through prompt injection or through a RAG store while you're in the IDE, then that's even more useful. I want to take this a step further because let's apply this to your podcast. I'm typically not a huge fan of podcasts because it's about an hour of information, but really about 5 minutes of like core insight that is really valuable. And I would like to be able to get that information as quickly as possible without spending an hour. Like, how can I work smarter and not harder? You could transcribe all of your podcasts, load them into a vector store like Notebook LM from Google, create an entire bot that, let's say, is trained off of your voice on 11 Labs. And potentially someone could engage with this podcast right now and ask follow up questions.
Ooh, that's an interesting idea. So you literally get like a virtual Jasmine, for example, that's trained on everything you're talking about, and someone could just jump in, and I guess you could even use some of the face stuff as well, and actually have your face there, your voice, and someone could ask questions, and you could respond based off just what's in.
Just what's in the podcast. So the podcast should be an experience as opposed to a one-way transfer of information. And I see us going there. And if you want to train like an avatar, like you legally can't train an avatar on me without my permission, but if you did, you could use like Synthesia or HeyGen. They're really good technologies right now to try to replicate your person.
So yeah, that's kind of a very interesting idea. Yeah, because podcasts originally started out as it's media you consume. So like, I mean, you work for Netflix, obviously, and Netflix is media you consume. Originally, that was kind of the first version of it. You would sit there and you would watch something, and you would be entertained, and after the hour, 2 hours, you're done. There isn't really this idea of, oh, I want to dig further into this. Now, what you're suggesting here kind of aligns more with that more involved experience. Like Netflix, for example, started having games where, no, games on word, kind of choose your own adventure type things where you kind of choose the route you would take. There's some Minecraft episodes where you could choose the path through. It wasn't like a Black Mirror as well or something where you could choose.
Like a Bandersnatch from Black
Yes.
Mirror. Yep.
Yes, that was it. Bandersnatch. Yeah. So again, it's kind of, instead of going for that passive consumption, it's going for more of an engagement thing. And that you're kind of suggesting the same for podcasts. Instead of just being, I want to listen to these cool people talking, which is going to take an hour of my time, which some people still may want to do because that's entertaining. Others might be like, you know what? I want to get an explanation of this. So summarize it in a few minutes. Give me these points. What was this person saying? But then to actually do that with a synthetic human in some ways that's built off the voice, potentially the face of one of the guests, and then based off everything that was talked about. And then you could even, I guess, you could augment that as well with, you say you have this GenAI secret source, so you could augment that with that blog post. So, oh, hey Jasmine, you mentioned this. Can you explain something that's here? And then that can go off and pull information from your GenAI secret source website. So that kind of idea of it's an interactive experience.
Yeah, so from my GenAI secret sauce website, I'm using a technology called Ghost. So it's basically a Node.js website that I'm hosting on Picopods. I set it up so that each one of my articles could be fed in via a prompt injection. So if anyone wanted to ask questions or engage with the chatbot, if you're a member and it's free, that they could potentially do that. I don't have it set up yet where it's an avatar of me or I'm talking to you, but that could be a next step.
Okay, that kind of leads to this interesting idea then that the content you create is not sort of static content for someone to consume, but you're designing it to feed an interactive experience. And I guess we need to think about that as not just content creators, but even people who write documentation. We have to think a lot about how the AI is going to be a consumer of a lot of what we create. We need to build things in a way that it is AI friendly, whether it's LLMs.txt instead of robots.txt, or whether it's just this horrible scenario where some folks are finding that their hosting bill has gone through the roof because the AI is constantly crawling their site and they can't afford it. So you've kind of got this, you're coming from this very bullish angle of, hey, I want my content to be consumed by AI. And then you've got people like Cloudflare going, oh, well, AI is eating a lot of people's bandwidth. Let's build honeypots to trap them because we don't want people getting massive bills. So it's kind of a different change on how we think about the web as content, whether you want to call it like Web 6 or whatever, or yeah, whatever version we want to do. It's this idea of, is this relevant content to feed an AI? Is this my intention behind my content?
Yeah, and I think too, it's meeting the users where they're at. So, as opposed to me going to your site, that there should be some sort of extension that or an app that I can install on my computer. So, as I'm writing a memo, if something comes up that maybe Shonda said on a previous podcast that is relevant to what I'm trying to write, that I get that insight at that point, as opposed to having to remember, oh, I think she said something, and I think it was on this YouTube channel, and not never being able to find it. I think making things as easily just in time as possible.
So it's changed this consumption model. If rather you go off and search something, you get this kind of constant, almost like a constant feed there saying, hey, oh, you mentioned this. Do you want this information? Do you want this information? Do you want this information?
But you curate your feed, kind of like you curate like a Spotify list. Because one of the issues that we've run into is like we built an internal, let's say, enterprise search solution that indexes millions of our files, as well as has like a Gen AI on top of it. And what we're finding is everyone says it's garbage in, garbage out, but it's really difficult for you to control these sources that it's looking through to ensure that the context that you get back is more accurate. So I think so much in the future will be not about indexing everything, but about indexing the correct things.
Pieces, for example, we've got filters for time ranges and sources. So with pieces, you can say, summarize the conversation I was having with Jasmine, but you could say, summarize the conversation I was having with Jasmine in GChat. So that way, it just looks at a chat we'd be having in GChat rather than a conversation we'd be having in email or on a GitHub issue. And so the same kind of idea of having that curation of, as you're writing down something, oh yeah, Shunde was talking about something like this, but because you can set the context to just be, oh yeah, what are the podcasts that Shonde's been on, just that, and that pulls out the relevant information. So adding that kind of guardrails in some ways around just the context that's important to me is really important, because otherwise AI has everything, and there's a lot of stuff out there.
And there's a lot of noise and a lot of information that might just be outdated. Maybe it was an older system and we've migrated to something else. So just to ensure that that noise is reduced.
Don't end up you're searching for something and when something it brings back, yeah, here's all the information you need, here's all the code, everything is like, but this has been deprecated for the past couple of years, and now you go down this rabbit hole of entirely the wrong code base.
I'm also in a bunch of book clubs, and I feel the way that we consume books in the future will change. So what I've done is every time like I'm reading through a book, I will take the key points and I will build a prompt off of it so that I can create a custom GPT in which you can engage thoughtfully on how you can apply the key items of the book into your life. Because I feel that's also how you're going to learn.
This is kind of this idea of, here is a book that's got it's like a self-help book, it's a management book, it's a productivity book, it's basically, it is a book that is giving you guidance for some part of your life, and rather than just read through it and take notes and kind of try and work it out, you're saying that becomes a source for a chatbot conversation. So, oh hey, yeah, I was you have one against like the mythical man month, for example, and you start asking questions, right? Okay, should I scale my team? What are the thoughts on this? Explain this in more detail. What's the, whatever it is, and actually have that more interactive conversation.
Yes, as it applies specifically to that book, as opposed to like a whole world of LLM foundational knowledge.
Yeah, because you ask the LLM, oh, how do I do OKRs? And you will get measure what matters, and you will get a whole load of other thoughts, opinions, and all that in there. Whereas you can just say, right, I want a chatbot over the book. It's kind of like, I guess you think about like the Kindle. It brought not only this concept of I can read a book, but I can take notes actually in the Kindle app. I can do things with it. You're saying take that one step further and just put a chatbot.
Over the book. Yeah, it's almost like a coach for the book. So it could be a career coach that is helping you on that specific topic. I did this most recently with a book called Slow Productivity. And one of the key items or something that stuck out to me was productivity termites. So, what are the productivity termites? The things that like eat away at your productivity that you're not really getting anywhere. It's almost like you're on a treadmill and you're running at 100 miles per hour, but you're running in place. So to identify what those are in your daily life so that you can stop spinning your wheels on those specific things and focus on the things that are getting you somewhere. So it's kind of like an exercise in which you have to think, and it asks you leading questions to help you determine what your productivity termites are.
Because you get a lot of that quite a lot in books. You actually get some exercises in a book. You know, identify these areas. What are your thoughts about it? What have you? So by making those a more interactive experience, it's almost like you're taking a coach, you know, like an in-person coach that would come to an event and teach you the concepts and then give you the piece of paper, and you've got here's 20 minutes, write down the productivity termites. You're getting that from a more automated experience with an AI chatbot.
When I started at Netflix, one of the recommended books that we had to read was Crucial Conversations because we are a culture of feedback. So we have to have crucial conversations all the time. But now with something like ChatGPT, you can practice a crucial conversation out loud with a chatbot, which I think is really useful.
Yeah, I had David Packman on the show a few episodes ago, and he builds these social robots. And one thing he was saying is this is a great tool for venting frustrations, practicing conversations. And he's got a child on the spectrum who struggles with a lot of social interactions and can actually practice social interactions on a robot, because it's better to practice on a robot, make mistakes, and then get that feedback and then fix that, than it is to practice on a human, because if you make these mistakes, the human's not going to be there for you to practice on the next one. It's very hard to say to a friend, "Hi, I'm terrible at social interactions. Can we talk?" And then just tell me when I'm being really horrible, because people don't accept that. Same as in the workplace conversation. If you get that wrong, you can destroy a workplace relationship that's going to could potentially affect your whole career. So if you can practice those conversations with an AI up front, you're not running the risk of making that offending that senior person who's going to destroy your career.
Not only, so that's proactive with practicing. You can also do this. Let's say I get the transcript of this podcast afterwards. I can take that transcript, put it into AI, and be like, what should I have not said? What should I have said better? What are the things that I should do to improve in the future? How can I articulate my thoughts better? So it's like constantly helping you improve yourself, which another reason why I am bullish about AI.
Because it's got this non-judgmental, here is feedback, and it's very kind of quick to do it. You could just take the transcription of this, just drop it in. What can I do better? Here's 5 points. Cool. Thank you very much. Or you can put a chat bot on it and you can kind of interact with it. Interesting. And I guess as well, for things like when it's a fiction novel, you wouldn't want. How would you think about AI in that experience? Because obviously, you know, we read books for just the sheer joy sometimes of every word, of the worlds that are created, the interactions with people. It allows us to imagine different scenarios. And would you think of the same thing for fiction? You know, imagine a chatbot over Tolkien that's been trained on all the appendices and the Silmarillion and all the other books, and you could go, okay, please explain more about the history of the ring, or what have you.
I see that as virtual LARPing. I see the potential for people to engage with a storyline and play a character, almost like they're building their fan fiction because they want to immerse themselves into that world, but they can do it with a chatbot. So I do see that as a possibility. It's almost okay. Remember Star Trek and the holodeck? Like we're not to the point where we like maybe with VR we can kind of have that situation, but you could potentially immerse yourself into a story either verbally or written using an AI tool.
Just kind of thinking an interesting idea here. So some of the very first computer games were text based. You know, I'd probably way before your time, but you know, you'd look around, move left, move right, pick up the carrot. You know, folks of my generation, we all played The Hobbit and got stuck in the Goblin's dungeon. But you could almost build that. You could almost build these interactive experiences. You say, here's a book, build me a game, just like a text-based game almost to start with, where I navigate through the book and it uses the stories and the scenes, and I've got a bit more of that interaction, as you say, that kind of LARPing, that's live action role play for folks who've not come across the term before. This idea of I want to dress up and become a character. You wouldn't necessarily dress up and sit at your computer and interact with it. Maybe you would. We don't judge. But it's that idea of you could create these stories out of it that you interact with, and you could have these choose your own adventure style um, adventures, for want of a better term, inside your favorite books.
And it doesn't have to be books. It can be TV shows. It can be movies. It can be anything that is engaging content in which you want to live in that world.
So you could take Stranger Things, for example, and say, right, I want to.
That nightmare world. Yeah. I want to be attacked by a demigorgon.
Yes, pretend I'm in the Upside Down. Give me a choose your own adventure for this. I mean, my wife loves Stranger Things, and but she gets scared of the Demigorgon. It's like you pull the blanket up over her head, hide her face, moments like that. So yeah, she'd love that if you could create a chatbot where she could interact with the different characters. I guess that's the power of AI. That, going back to what you're saying before, is it kind of democratizes a lot of these capabilities. We don't necessarily have the skills and the experience to build these experiences ourselves all the time. But if we can throw it at the AI and say, hey, my human side of it is I want to do this. This is the kind of expectation of what I've got. You just do the hard stuff for me. I can scale quicker. I can deliver quicker. I can build this quicker and have this involvement with it.
I think too, because I brought this up before, how it like democratizes development in a way that we've never seen. One of the challenges, because you told me not to fangirl about AI the entire podcast, that I had to bring in some of the pitfalls. One of the challenges that we have at Netflix is that we've always hired some of the best talent in the world. And we've treated them like fully formed adults. And so we haven't spent a lot of time on foundational documentation or on guardrails because we trust people and we give them the freedom and responsibility to create great things. And now we have people who have never taken a computer science or programming course in their life. They don't even know what an if then case statement is or logic statement. And they are able to build finance apps. Um, but because they don't have a background, they don't know how to create it securely in a way that is going to be stable, that is going to scale, that is going to work seamlessly in our ecosystem. And they have not been our typical consumer. So it's made us have to change our thought process on how we provide our paved road tools to people who don't have a software development background.
This idea of you had this paved road and they're getting vibe coders, for want of a better expression, coming together. So how do you make sure that if someone is vibing with the AI building a system and got a certain amount of ultra high productivity, but what they're building, it's got to be secure, it's got to have observability. You can't vibe code Netflix, because if it doesn't work, or you screw up payments, or you screw up any kind of rights issues, you're potentially dealing with reputational risk, millions if not billions of dollars of loss. So you've got to make sure how do you bring together vibe coding and paved path.
And it's not just like there's vibe coding from engineers, which like they'll watch it as it's coding. Maybe they'll allow it to do some like terminal commands. But most of the time, they're very worried if it's something that's going to go into production. If it's a hack day project on a weekend, no worries. But they also know like this is going to cause problems. Or I need to have separation of concerns, or just these typical things that you would be able to see your code and notice that this isn't the best way to do something. But don't want to deter anyone. Like I'm really excited that these people are wanting to use Gen AI to be more productive. So it's about how can I empower them in a secure and safe way. Maybe setting up like a Gen AI dev workspace for them that has guardrails, training. Like maybe there should be like a Gen AI training for someone that's never programmed before. Like these are the key things that you should know in order to create secure applications within the Netflix ecosystem.
So you have the sandbox, you can do things safely, you can play with it, and then you build a chat bot against all your documentation on building safe systems. So someone can then interact with that and say, hey, you go, here's my project. What do I need to fix to align with all the rules? And then that can go, yes, you've got all these security vulnerabilities, you're not considering this,
Have a checkbox or checklist. Yep.
and just it goes through and then as part of that, it's not just you don't have this. You then got the whole education piece around, okay, you don't have observability. Here is some documentation, videos, learning materials around observability, how we do observability in Netflix, best practices. So you've got almost like it builds a custom learning path for them directly. And again, this comes back to the idea of AI does the boring stuff. A senior engineer could spend time building up this learning path for a junior engineer, or the AI could do it automatically. So the senior engineer is still free to carry on innovating and building cool stuff.
I came from developer education as well and developer enablement. I'm now underneath engineering operations. I've moved around a lot. But one of the things that I think is going to happen with developer education is that we're not going to have these hour-long courses. Instead, it's going to be populating a chatbot that engages with the user and helps them onboard over. They could continue to use it for years if they wanted to, um, because we found that if we piled in, let's say, like a whole week of onboarding, they only retain maybe 70% of that information. But if they're in their IDE and it makes some suggestions to them, not like Clippy, something that's actually useful, and tells them, walks them through how they might build an application using our paved road tools, I think that's going to be more useful than like front loading them in an onboarding situation.
Now, you joke about Clippy,
Uh huh.
and things. Clippy was way ahead of its time in terms of, and I don't mean that like this was amazing technology that was light years by anyone else. What I mean is the technology wasn't ready for when Clippy came out. And this idea of it looks like you're writing a letter, can I help you? We mocked it because it wasn't very good, but now is the era that Clippy would be useful. So you almost want to have a Netflix Clippy that pops up and say, "Hey, it looks like you're building a Netflix app. Did you know you need to follow these secure practices?" Maybe not as cheesy, but just having that, that's literally what you're suggesting is like a Clippy tool. It identifies the context of what you're doing at this point in time, and once it makes the relevant suggestions based off what you've done to kind of help you along that path. So rather than, as you say, you'll sit there and watch videos for the first week and forget everything, you just have that constant, it's there when you need it information based off the context of what you're doing.
And not as much that it's walking them through. I know I use that term. More like it's looking at their code. It's seeing where it can make suggestions and giving them like, would you like me to make these changes for you? And then letting it know that I made these changes. So more like an AI agent that is working almost more autonomously. Clippy was just a lot of reading. Like I don't want it to just be documentation like chunked out in paragraphs that they have to read. I want it to actually be able to help them and guide them and do some of the work for them.
So it's kind of, hey, we spotted this particular bad security practice in your code. Here is a new version of the code. Here's the changes in line. Here's an explanation of the changes, accept or cancel.
It's a teachable moment. So every time they do make a mistake, don't just fix it for me. Like teach me, tell me like how I could do it better in the future.
Because if it just fixes it, people just become lazy, don't they? It's like accept, 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 and they just know they don't have to worry about it because the AI will fix it for them, which obviously is not a good situation to be in.
And you mentioned too that you had some developers on your podcast recently that weren't AI fanatics like I am. Breaking down our developer population at Netflix, I have some numbers and I want to get some feedback from you if it aligns with what you're experiencing. Okay. So I would say about 15% of our developers have heard of AI. They're not living under a rock, but they're not really diving in. It's not top of mind for them. They're focused on what they need to do for the quarter, and AI just is not on their list of priorities. And then I would say we have like an engaged majority. So that's like 85% that they're using AI in some way, like at least using GitHub Copilot, if not something else. And of that 85%, I think we have like 5% that are early adopters, super fans. And these are the developers, they're building MCP servers in their free time. They're sending me Slack messages on the weekend and be like, you have to see this really cool thing that I just created. And we are just geeking out all the time. Of those 85%, I would say 50% are enthusiastic users. So they're excited about AI. They're ready to use the tools that we provide. They're not losing sleep over the job security because, again, like I said, OpenAI is still hiring developers. But they are not actively experimenting beyond what we give them. And then of that 85%, there's probably 30% that are in, I call this the AI slop camp, where they refer to poorly implemented AI code as AI slop. They want to go into it cautiously. They think this is potentially another .com bubble. They're worried that this is going to make developers lazy. They think it's leading to bad code and future cleanup. And they also believe that wrong AI answers are worse than no answers at all. So if they are using, let's say, our internal generative AI enterprise search, and it gives them a wrong answer, even if 80% of the time it's the right answer, it's that 20% of the time that they're going to focus on, and they're going to say, like, this is a waste of time and resources, and I don't see the ROI.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that kind of roughly aligns. I mean, I would probably put, based off the people I've been talking to, I'll probably put at least 5% of I'm not touching AI with a barge pole. The there's not even, you say that 15% have kind of heard of it, not using it. I would say probably a third of those folks, in my experience, would be like, I'm not, no, not just a case of heard of it, I haven't tried it yet because I'm too busy. I'm not going anywhere near that. There's a certain, I don't say grumpy old man, but it's probably quite a good description, because it is usually grumpy old men. I don't want to use these newfangled things, shouts at clouds type thing. Again, 5%, as you say, like of the early adopters, like, yeah, I want to use this. This is great. Definitely see that. I think a lot of people are, okay, this is a useful tool. It's useful. Generally happy with it. But the AI slop, you say about 30%, like, oh, this is AI slop. Yeah, I see that a lot. You see a lot of people saying, yeah, I've spent more time fighting with what the AI created than if I've just written it myself. I'm kind of very much in the middle. I'm on the fence. I'm definitely an AI cynic, and yet I have spent time where I've tried to do something with AI and I've just given up and done it myself. The new Pieces MCP server. We're recording this before this is actually public, so hush hush. For that, I knocked together the first implementation of that in Dart, which is the language we use, not really having done Dart coding before. And I spent probably a day with the AI fighting with it, and it didn't create anything that worked. So I had to go back to first principles and build it out myself. And kind of, although I wouldn't put myself in that AI slop pile, I do realize that AI does generate some utter garbage. And the only way I get it working is because I knew how to code, so I could write it myself. So that does kind of reflect what I'm seeing across kind of the market as a whole. Yeah, in general, we're all thinking it's a good idea, but it's definitely a very small number of people like, yeah, AI is going to change the world. It's going to do everything for us. And I mean, you're saying that 15% at Netflix kind of heard about it and not using it. Is there a big developer education push to kind of get folks using it, or are you accepting that, yeah, it's just not a tool some folks are going to use?
I think we accept that it's a tool that some folks are just not going to use or going to find value in. But I also feel like there's a possibility, depending on the projects that they're working on, that it's going to impact their productivity, because other people who may be even lower level than them are going to have a higher output. Um, I use the example of when everything was like paper based, and so everyone was filling out forms like on an actual piece of paper, as opposed to, or even when it was PDF, and then they were still, I don't know, it wasn't going into a database, like they were filling out the PDF and then attaching it to an email or something, and someone was doing the data entry in the back end. The person who's automating that, the person who's digitizing that process is going to be so much more faster and efficient than the person that is resistant to digitizing or to moving from paper to a database.
I mean, 100% agree. Yes, you are going to be a lot more productive to use these tools. So, interesting story from my experience, if I may. I did kind of an internship just after I finished university. So, short stint working for Marconi, their underwater weapons division. Experience that really turned me into a pacifist. And we're talking back in 1999 here. So, this was a while ago. And what they used to do is they have these torpedoes, they would put sensors in them, drop them in the water, run tests, and it would extract this information. And then the way they would create reports is they would get these, they would log into a machine, print out the hex codes of everything that the torpedo was thinking, go through it with a highlighter pen, work out what the torpedo was doing, and then manually import things into Excel, create charts, create written reports. And it would take about 2 weeks to do this. And it was a standard process of, if you do this, you write this. If it does this, you write this. And I'm like, nah, I can automate that. So I wrote some VBA, Visual Basic for Applications. For those who've never heard of that, it was the original coding inside Excel to log into the server, download everything, put it all on a spreadsheet, highlight everything in color, create all the charts, and literally automated the whole thing. So I could build an entire report in about 30 minutes, and it would take someone 2 weeks to do that. And the idea is you do a report, and then the anomalies, it would go off for analysis. I could do it in 30 minutes instead of 2 weeks. And it was like, obvious this is the solution for it. And I did this, and I wrapped up my internship, and I left, and they threw it away because it made them more productive, which meant the people who've been there 20 years and were just waiting for their pension, they weren't needed anymore. You could literally replace the entire department with one person just typing in a run number, click go, type in a run number, click go. You could probably just automate all that out. And so they didn't want the productivity boost because they were well established in their jobs and they didn't want this young upstart changing things. So I wonder that how much of that is going to happen with these AI tools. How much people are like, I'm scared this is going to impact my job. So maybe not like Netflix, but maybe smaller companies, engineering managers going, no, we don't want AI because I don't want anyone appearing to be more productive than me.
Oh, I definitely see there's going to be some sabotage. I do see it right now in higher education because I know that faculty feel threatened by what AI can do and they don't want to be replaced by technology. And again, I'm a strong believer in human in the loop. I think that faculty and teachers are important, but I know that there are some that are quick to adopt the technology and others that are finding every reason why it should fail and why they don't want to use it.
There are those people out there who are, yeah, they're scared. I think a lot of it is it's fear, isn't it? It's, will I lose my job to this technology? Rather than going, okay, how can I be more productive and how can I embrace this and keep my job because I am doing a fantastic job because I'm a lot more productive.
And how can I don't know, have more free time to do things that I enjoy more? Or maybe I'm just teaching one class and maybe AI can set it up so I can teach 50 classes or I could teach a global class. Like I can have a reach that maybe I had never considered and it actually empowers me to reach like, my highest potential.
To the idea of using AI to scale. So last week I had Jen Fox from Microsoft on. She was saying that one of her friends is a special education teacher and uses AI to create essentially differentiated learning. So she's got some a lesson plan, and then with special education kids, you've got kids of reading levels from like first grade to fifth grade, all in one class. And so you can just take your lesson plan and say, differentiate this for someone with a first grade reading level, a second grade reading level, and so on. And you get these different lesson plans. You still have to review it. You still need to be the educator, but suddenly you can scale what you're doing easier to a bigger audience. And you're basically saying the same thing. Is that if you're teaching in higher ed, if you can say, how do I make these lessons accessible to a bigger audience? How do I make these lessons accessible to a global audience? Or how can I then be more inclusive of different folks in my classroom? So I've got people who have different language abilities. So my wife's a fourth grade teacher, and she's been teaching someone who's got like a first grade reading ability in English because she's from Afghanistan. She's got the knowledge and skills of a fourth grader, just doesn't have the English experience because she had to leave the country pretty quickly. And so it's very easy to use AI to build this differentiated learning plan for someone who's got the knowledge, but not the English capabilities. And you can do the same in further education. How do we get a more global group of people in the classroom? By creating lesson plans and then adjusting those for different language. It's kind of a great way to scale automatically.
And I think that you can personalize it to the student too. So it used to be like, oh, we're going to have persona based learning, but now it can be like personalized to the individual. It can figure out where their gaps are and help them fill those gaps.
You just drop a chatbot over the lesson plans again, same kind of idea.
And so you're not creating potentially biased quizzes that someone's going to post on the internet because it changes based on, how you respond to the previous questions.
And that's, I guess, a good just think about plagiarism and cheating as well. As you say, there's often you get a lot of these assessments that are multiple choice assessments because it's easy to do and mark. they get leaked on the internet, people learn those. But if you have a chatbot automatically generating questions, and if it gets an answer that's not quite right, or that's not in depth enough, it can kind of lead you towards the right answer, rather than just an essay question where someone doesn't read the question correct or doesn't understand the intent behind the question and doesn't necessarily write the right answer. You have the chatbot leading you. You get a much more inclusive experience for people with less opportunity for cheating.
And it's equally as challenging for everyone. So I took a couple courses at Harvard for my master's. And one of the things, like, I'm an A student typically, and I was getting a C in this class, and the course was set up so that everyone should be getting a C. And that is because they make it challenging. So even when you take a test, if you get the answer correct, the next question is going to be harder. So they base it so that no matter what, you're challenged based on your abilities. And I feel like that's what education should be. You should be challenged based on your abilities as opposed to like a group setting, like everyone in second grade should have this level of learning.
See, because you end up basically running classes at the pace of the slowest learner, don't you? Because you can't leave kids behind. But equally, that means you end up with kids being bored because they've done the work and they're not being pushed hard enough. So, but you kind of add this level of customization on top of having human teachers in place to provide all the support that are needed for kids.
Exactly. And you're constantly challenged, and maybe, I mean, grades might not even exist in the future. Like you might start in first grade, and by the end of the year, you're working at a third grade level, and that is okay because it's your specific learning.
It's an interesting idea. That feels like quite a powerful future for everyone. That way, everyone gets what they need.
Exactly. It's transformative.
Now, one thing you mentioned about helping folks in further education have more time to do the things they want. So, yeah, just I guess a kind of a personal question for you, really, as you automate parts of your life with AI. What are you going to do when you get replaced by AI? Do you think you could ever be replaced? Do you think we'll get to the point where you can just sit on a beach sipping mojitos and have an AI agent do everything for you?
You remember like Tim Ferriss's book, The 4 Hour Work Week?
Mm-hmm.
Like that has been my dream since I read that book. Like I want to be drinking mojitos on a beach and having my AI agents doing my work for me. I think that would be phenomenal. I think what will happen is if I figure out how to do it, people are going to hire me to teach them how to do it. And that is what's going to keep me relevant. And I think maybe I've got 25 more years or so left before I retire, maybe longer if I can't afford it.
Don't look at your 401k today. Do not look at your 401k today.
Yeah, do not look at my yeah. So maybe like 40 years. I don't know. But I don't see AI completely replacing the human in that time frame. Maybe in like 100 years.
It'd be nice if it does. We can sit on the beach sipping mojitos, but I think we need to have a purpose, don't we? People need a purpose, and as much as sitting on a beach drinking mojitos might be a purpose, it's not. That's not really what's going to drive you. And it sounds like what drives you is this: is hey, here's this cool tech. How can I help people? How can I make things better? So this idea of yes, if you can automate your life, the fun part's going to be teaching other people how to automate their life.
And I originally started my career in the public sector, so that's just my mentality. I just want to share knowledge and hopes that others share as well, and then together we can be the best versions of ourselves.
I like that. I think that's a good point to wrap up. Thank you very much indeed, Jasmine. It's been an absolute blast having you on. Yeah, thank you for your time. And I'll make sure that links to your GenAI secret source in the show notes, and all that good stuff will be in the show notes. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Jim. This was so much fun.